My name is Ben Lebowitz, and I'm a graduate student at the Nelson Institute for Environmental Studies at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. In my life, it's become apparent that climate change can, and will continue to, produce environmental problems that affect the lives of everyday people. There's no better example than the Colorado River Basin. One of the many characteristics that makes the crisis within the Colorado River Basin so complex is the legal framework that governs all 7 basin states, 30 tribal nations, and the Republic of Mexico. In this video, we will break down this ever-evolving collection of compacts, court rulings, laws, and guidelines, referred to loosely as the Law of the River.
In the mid-19th century, after the American Civil War, the West filled up with residents searching for new opportunities. Both the 1862 Homestead Act and the 1877 Desert Lands Act allowed for these people to find a piece of land and develop it. Development and irrigation were indefinitely linked. The Desert Lands Act confirmed the laws of prior appropriation established in an earlier congressional act. This meant, in essence, that the first party to use the water and put it to a beneficial use would have dibs on that water in perpetuity. First dibs would be synonymous with senior rights, and last dibs with junior rights, and so on. This is one of the most essential pieces within the Law of the River. As California began to develop its mining and agricultural industries faster than all other states in the West, they began to lay claim to some of the most senior water rights in the basin. In 1922, the other 6 basin states of Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, Wyoming, Arizona, and Nevada brought California to the table in order to put a speed bump in front of their rapid development and assure that they would never run the rest of the system dry. After almost a full year of negotiations, the states were able to come up with a short list of decisions. 1. The system would be divided into an upper and lower basin. The lower basin would consist of Arizona, California, and Nevada. The upper basin would consist of Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, and Wyoming. 2. Over a 10-year period, the upper basin agreed to not cause the flow of water to be below 75 million acre-feet, measured at Lee's Ferry. This essentially meant that every year, the upper basin was allotted 7.5 million acre-feet of water, and the lower basin was also allotted 7.5 million acre-feet. This assumed a pie of 15 million acre-feet was to be split between the 2 basins for the distant future. In addition to the 15 million acre-feet already allotted, the compact made room for another 1.5 million acre-feet for Mexico, as well as a spare 1 million acre-feet for the lower basin, especially California, to continue its rapid development. Because Arizona believed that California would continue to run rampant in their development, they refused to sign the compact. This allotment of 17.5 million acre-feet of water would come to doom this region for the next century.
We need a system of operational rules that condition the amount of water the various states get on how much water is actually available. And not having that kind of linkage is why we are where we are today.
In the 20th century, the average flow of the Colorado River was only 15.2 million acre-feet. And in the 21st century, the average yearly flow has been 12.4 million acre-feet. Because the compact was signed directly following some of the wettest decades in American history, the decision to over-allocate the water was one based on short-sightedness. Now, we bear the consequences of such a choice. Arizona was not officially bound to the compact until the passing of the 1928 Boulder Canyon Project Act. In addition to cementing the compact as law, this enacted the creation of both the Hoover Dam and the All-American Canal. The act also authorized the Secretary of the Interior to be the water czar of the lower basin. The case of Arizona versus California lasted over a decade, establishing the lower basin states' yearly allotments to water. Each year, California would receive 4.4 million acre-feet, Arizona would receive 2.8 million acre-feet, and Nevada would receive 0.3 million acre-feet. Additionally, this decision allowed for Arizona to construct the $4 billion, 336-mile-long Central Arizona Project, which now delivers water from the Colorado River Basin to millions of customers in central Arizona. Arizona versus California also affirmed the results of another massive decision within the Law of the River. Winters versus United States. In 1908, the Supreme Court ruled that Indian reservations inherently held property rights, and included in these property rights was the right to a reasonable amount of water for tribes' present and future needs. Additionally, Arizona versus California impacted Indian water rights significantly, placing tribal allocations within the bounds of states' total allocations. This indefinitely created tension between tribes' federally reserved rights and states' prior appropriation laws. In the lower basin, there was still one major party left out: Mexico. The 1944 treaty between the United States and Mexico enacted an apportionment of 1.5 million acre-feet yearly from the Colorado River Basin to be delivered to the country of Mexico. Over the years, the nations have had squabbles over this agreement, mostly with regard to the quality of the water delivered. Starting in 1973, though, the United States introduced programs to reduce the amount of salt and sediment in the water flowing downstream to Mexico.
Reclamation had been given the responsibility of building the Yuma desalting plant. The Yuma desalting plant was built to allow the government to meet the requirements of Minute 242 of the International Boundary and Waters Commission.
In 1948, the states of Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming created the Upper Colorado River Basin Compact. Unlike the lower basin states, the upper basin came together to set allotments as a group. In addition, the allotments were agreed upon as a percentage of the water available. Colorado would receive 51.75%, Utah 23%, Wyoming 14%, and New Mexico 11.25%. Despite the reality that the basin as a whole was already dividing a larger amount of water than they really had, water projects continued to move forward. Both the Colorado River Storage Project Act of 1956 and 1968 allowed for massive developments of water projects that would drastically change the flow of water in the Southwest. The projects included the Glen Canyon Dam, Flaming Gorge Dam, the Central Utah Project, and more. Despite almost none of these or other projects proving economically or ecologically viable to build, the Bureau of Reclamation made it their mission to build the impossible. From the beginning of the law of the river, the states have allocated water that only existed on paper. And because of the lower basin's rapid development, the upper basin has been forced to share the leftovers.
The way the compact architecture works is that the lower basin gets 7.5 million acre feet. They get the first 7.5 million acre feet of water in the system. So it's like the cook in the back of the diner is making a pie. And the lower basin diners, they get exactly 7.5 million acre feet of that pie. And then the upper basin gets the leftovers.
Through treaties and court decisions, the rights of Native American nations, as well as the Republic of Mexico, were honored in writing, but not necessarily in practice. Infrastructure and technology have allowed the basin to develop at an unprecedented rate, but now these same projects have arguably enabled long-term water shortages. Since the law of the river is a living collection of legislation, court rulings, compacts, and more, it has continued to change up until the present. Our next video will outline the most current and pressing components within the law of the river.